And today's reading comes from Luke chapter 5. Glory to you, O Lord. Once while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, that is the Sea of Galilee, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, much like us. Jesus saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Jesus got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, that's Peter, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, Peter, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and to help them. And they came and filled both boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to him, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Well, I love fishing stories. I have some fishing stories to tell, but first, I think this is not really the right location. You gotta tell a fishing story by some water. So why don't you come with me and I'll tell you more about it. Hey everybody, here we are. We are on location. This is South Cove here in Old Saybrook where I live. I don't live too far from here. I come down here a lot. If you've ever seen me post any pictures of sunrises, this is the location. Isn't it pretty? I think it is. I like to spend some time down here. We walk past here all the time also. It's great. It's a great spot. During COVID, during those years, I shot a lot of church videos down here because I figured, wouldn't you rather look at this than my living room? But anyway, let's get to our passage. So today, our story from Luke is a fish story. And there's a few things about it we should kind of think about. One is that Jesus calls Peter, of course, but he also calls you and I to be fishers for people. Important. Another thing is there's something about what it means to help one another and come to each other's aid and why that's so important, not just in life, but in our lives of faith. And there's another piece to it, that there's just something that happens when Jesus shows up that makes things, well, just not what you expected. So I want to talk about all three of those things. But to do that, first I want to tell you my favorite fishing story. It happened about 10 or 11 years ago. I think it was 2014. It might have been 2013. But we were in Minnesota at the camp where my friend used to be the director. And Tammy works now. She works remotely from Connecticut, doing day camp and retreats and a bunch of online stuff. It works. But anyway, this is one of our favorite places, is Lutheran Bible Camp. It's a sister camp of Calumet, beautiful in its own way. Anyway, we were gathering there with our camp friends. So we have 4 couples. There's 11 kids between all of us. Tammy and I just have the 2, Joe and Mia. We have a great time when we get together, and we used to do family camp. And so we would do it at Luther Crest. Not every year, but a lot of years, that's exactly where we did it. It was just easier to get cabins or rooms in the retreat center and kind of all be together, and the kids could do their thing and adults could do their own thing, and we could all do some stuff together. As family camp is, it was fun. It was a great time. Those years were really, really special. Well, one year, my friend Dave, who was the director, he had a pontoon boat. He said, why don't we take the kids fishing? And I said, that's a great idea. I'd love to take the kids fishing. But there's 11 of them. And we were trying to figure out, could we get all 11 of them on this boat? And would it be too many? And we decided, here's what we'll do. We will take the girls one day and the boys the second day. And we thought this was going to be a wonderful idea. So it was the morning we were going to take the girls, and as girls do, they came all prepared. They came with a little snack pouch, lunch with them. They came all dressed in little sweatshirts, and they were ready to go. And they came down and sat on the dock and were ready for us. And they wanted to know what to do, so we got them all in life jackets, and we had all the fishing equipment, and we got it all on the boat, and we sat them all in a row on the little bench. And they looked at us with their big eyes, and they wanted to know what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and we explained the whole thing. My friend Dave, who's a big fisherman, he told them this is how you put the worm on the hook, and this is how you cast it out there, and this is how you reel it in, and this is how you take the fish off and throw it back in the lake. They all were nodding along and asking good questions, and just being really attentive to the task. So we took the kids out into the middle of the lake somewhere to where we thought was a good spot, and we got all set up, and they did exactly as they were instructed, and they started catching a ton of fish. In fact, Dave and I said, let's help them out. So Dave was on one end, and he was getting worms on the hooks as fast as he can, and as soon as he had another worm on the hook, the next girl was casting it out there, and another girl was reeling it in, and I was on the other end peeling those little fish off and throwing them back in the lake. And we took tons of pictures. I tried to find a bunch. I found one of my daughter Mia. So that was pretty fun. She was having a great time. The other girls were having a great time. Everybody loved it. We really enjoyed ourselves. They caught so many fish. They had a great time. We came back. They were chatting it up all evening long. It was probably the best day of the summer, right? It was just great. The next day came. It was time for the boys to go fishing. And if you know how boys will be boys, well, then you know what was happening. They all kind of came staggering in. They didn't bring snacks. They didn't bring sunscreen. They didn't bring anything. But they did have their tackle boxes full of stuff. They got on the boat, and they were yapping all the time about this spot they wanted to go to or that spot over there. They didn't want to really listen to what we were saying. They knew better. They were all very expert fishermen, because they were, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, so they knew it all. They didn't want this hook on. They wanted this other one. They didn't want this lure to go with it. They wanted this other one. They wanted to go by the tree on the coastline. They wanted to go by that shady spot over there. This is what we did for hours. They didn't catch anything. Bupkis, 0. A whole lot of nada. Zippo, right? I mean, they just couldn't catch a thing. And they came back, and yeah, it was all right. But they sat there and complained and talked about I didn't catch anything, and that was kind of the end of that. And I thought, man, that first day was so much more fun. We have in this story some expert fishermen. Peter, of course, Simon Peter. James and John, the sons of Zebedee. Depending on if you want to read the other versions of this in the other Gospels, Andrew could have been there too. If you watch the Chosen version of this, Zebedee himself is also there. They go out at night to go fishing. They know everything. They've got it all put together. And they catch exactly what the boys did when Dave and I took them fishing that day. Zippo. A whole lot of nada. bupkis, right? Zippo, zilch. And they come back kind of defeated, right? They should know better. They're good fishermen. They should have this all kind of put together, but they didn't. They didn't. When they come back, Jesus is there, who they have not met yet, and he is teaching a crowd, and he sees the two boats between James and John and Peter and maybe Andrew, and they want. Jesus thinks, well, with the crowd pressing in on him, with them being a little too close, with it being kind of hard maybe to hear, or maybe he just was exhausted from the day and needed a little space. I mean, he'd been healing people in prior stories and doing the things that Jesus does. So he asks if he can go on the boat, maybe to kind of sit out in the water just a little bit to maybe project his voice, or again, to maybe have some space, even to catch his breath. Again, we don't really know. But while he's there, he turns to Peter, to Simon Peter, and he tells him to set out into the water, because he knows he hasn't caught bupkis, zippo, a whole lot of nada, zilcho. And he says to him, why don't you put the net in over there? And he agrees. And the miraculous happens. The net fills. It's like those girls on that pontoon boat. You can't get them off the hook fast enough. You can't get another worm on the hook fast enough. You can't cast fast enough. There's just so many fish, but they're in a net, and they try to pull the net back onto the boat, but there's too many. They have to bring the other boat with James and John over so they can haul it in. And even then, they're afraid that the net is going to tear because it's so heavy, or even that the boat might sink, right? This is what happens when Jesus shows up. And what happens when we help each other, right? We can do some pretty amazing things. Peter has an interesting response. I've been teaching this story in my class. Actually, it just kind of came up in my cycle of lessons this week too, by chance. And I would stop right there. I said, what do you think Peter's going to say to Jesus? And they're all like, oh, he's going to thank him. He's going to say, wow, this is just so wonderful. I couldn't do it on my own. Thanks for your help. This miracle, it's so amazing, right? But Peter doesn't say that, does he? He repents. He says that he is a sinful man. He's basically saying, I'm not worthy of this. Why are you doing this for me? And it's in that moment that Jesus calls him. Follow me, Peter, and I will make you fish for people. And they left everything. And they followed him. Now, besides just having a fun fish story to tell, because I love telling that story, and I love that Mia and her friends really caught a lot of fish. And I think it's kind of funny that the boys who had fished a million times couldn't catch anything. What's it have to do with us? Today, now, here, especially in this time in which we're set? Well, first of all, I would say our calling has not changed, right? You and I are called to fish for people. What's that mean? I ask the kids when I'm teaching them, I said, Jesus isn't saying put a hook and get it in somebody's mouth and haul them off like that, right? And they're like, oh, no. And I said, good, I hope not. Please don't do that. But think about what Jesus does with Peter. He gets to where he is, right? He comes to where he's struggling, right? He helps him out in his place. He invites him into conversation. He invites him into faith. Same with us, right? We're called to go into all the places in which we interact normally anyway, whether at work or school or in our neighborhood or with our families or wherever, right? We're called to engage other people right? It doesn't mean you have to beat them over the head and say, join us or you're in real trouble. I mean, that's not who we are anyway. But what are we doing? We're called to invite people into community with us, right? Think of all of the ways that we share our faith simply just by helping. Do we have conversations about that, though? Do we try to meet the folks who we're helping? I've always loved doing like Habitat for Humanity because, or a project like that, because usually the family wants to stop by and wants to see who the people are that are helping, and you can actually kind of build a little community together. Or mission trips that I've done, sometimes they've invited the families that you're working with to come, or even just if you've ever been serving food, say like at a food like with loaves and fishes or something like that, you actually get to know the people. I always used to encourage kids. We used to do this one. It was at a different church where they would serve the food. But I'd say after we've served everybody, grab a plate and come sit next to somebody and listen to their story. Right? We're called to do that. We're called to engage other people, to get to know who they are, to receive them as a gift, to help them haul their nets. You might just learn something kind of cool. And in the midst of that, Jesus invites all of us. He's catching all of us into the faith. That's what we're called to be about. And especially in these days that are scary for a lot of folks, that are uncertain in so many ways, that it feels like you're not sure when the other shoe's going to drop, so to speak, or what's going to happen, because it's just so wild and crazy what we see happening all around us. We're called to go there and haul some nets, right? Fish for people. Be together. What happens when Jesus shows up? Amazing things happen. I mean, we can't count on it. We're not going to manufacture it. We're not going to pull on people's emotions and manipulate them. That's not what we're talking about at all. But we can share who we are, what it means for us to be sinful, broken, imperfect people that often don't get it right, that carry a lot of guilt and anxiety around, that aren't sure what we're supposed to do in this world. And yet at the foot of Jesus, does he send us away? Does he tell us we're terrible fishermen? No. He's there with a smile on his face, putting a fish on that hook, taking a fish off, telling you to cast over there. Because our calling is to fish for people. Our calling is to share the story, to live our faith, to receive others, to help them, right? And in doing so, we'll discover something about ourselves. Jesus shows up in some odd places sometimes. And what does he do? He jumps right into our lives. What does Jesus do in the midst of our own stuff, right? But he meets us with an outstretched hand to pull us along. He calls us with a forgiving word. He calls us by his mercy, by his love, by his cross, by his empty tomb, to bring new life to wherever it is we are. And he promises, even when we can't see it, especially when we can't see it, when it feels like our nets are empty and all we got is bupkis, zippo, zilch, zero, a whole lot of nada. He tells us that the catch is coming and it's gonna be full. Hang on, hang in, keep casting, because the catch is coming. Peace.